I feel was great for young people, and I'm still active with National Booster Clubs of America, and I got my start right here at Parsons College. I just want to thank everyone that, because like Lee said, I was pretty shy. I'm not that shy anymore, but I appreciate everything that I learned at Parsons, and I'll never forget it. So thank you very much.
Charles Reed, class of 1942, meteorologist. Would Linda Reed Leach please come to the podium for a presentation?
When my father was born sometime around 1917, he joined a dirt poor family of tenant farmers. He was puny, so he got out of most of the farm chores. But he had a fantastic brain that his mother recognized, and she spent the rest of her life doing her best to nurture it and keeping it going. My dad somehow managed to work himself up to an athletic stature. He got a track and field scholarship to Parsons. He also worked at Loudon's, like most of you people did. And Dr. Neff found out that he was a wildcat.
Correct.
Thank you. He also pitched for the Merchants team and the CCCs. And I guess he was a rather handsome young man. He had a lot of lady friends, including eventually my mother, whose father had come down from Minnesota with his construction company to build your high school after the old one burned down. His mother, through a lot of sacrifice on her part, made sure he stayed in books, made sure he kept his studies up. Parsons gave him the academic start he really needed. And from there, he joined the Army Air Corps, later the Air Force, which he stayed in until he retired. But his passion was always science, science and mathematics. His first achievement, if you want to call it that, was the naming of hurricanes after ladies. His mother never got to learn that. She might have been offended, I don't know. My mother was rather ticked off because he used her maiden name. So nobody knew it was her up on the board. This was all in preparation for VJ Day. After that, it was mostly physics. And he went on to permanent assignment in Washington, D.C., where he became an executive officer of the Air Force Office of Scientific Research. A little disillusionment because of the Washington politics, which we won't get into. And then he retired from the National Academy of Sciences as its director of physical science. Always the passion was science, and he had intended to come back to Fairfield after he retired and teach at Parsons, at least on a consulting basis. To that end, he bought his sister's farm down in Keosauqua. In the meantime, Parsons took a rather drastic change, so that never happened. I want to especially thank Dr. Neff for helping me, especially after my computer died, and he had to write me a letter. And I want to thank the committee because, in effect, you have brought my father home. A special thanks to my Uncle John. There's a very special man in the audience who's my father's brother, John Reed, lives in Libertyville. I love him dearly. And if possible, could he come up for the picture?
Sure. Fine.
Thank you.
John's going back to his seat, I'd like to share just a moment of my memory of John, the brother of our inductee. I had the honor of being intramural director in 1969 when I graduated, and John was on the maintenance staff working with Jack Carlson. And anytime I needed a project completed, the field house for a ball diamond, this guy would take care of it. So John, thank you very much for being part of Parsons history also. Dr. Ida Nagashima Schneck, class of 46, pediatrician. Dorothy Bell, please come to the podium as the presenter.
I hope when I finish my presentation, you will understand why I thought Ida Nakashima Schneck should be placed on the Parsons Wall of Honor. She graduated from Parsons with the class of 1946. Ida and her husband, Dr. Stuart Schneck, live in Greenwood Village, Colorado. I nominated her in recognition of her bravery and dignity in the face of personal adversity, for her lifetime of professional achievement, and most of all, for her love of Parsons College and all that was good and honorable about Parsons. In 1944, I moved onto the second floor of Ballard Hall for my freshman year. Ida Nakashima lived in the room across the hall. I was so impressed with Ida. She was attractive, highly intelligent, and had a beautiful singing voice. Prior to World War II, Ida, her parents, and two brothers lived on the West Coast. Then all citizens of Japanese ancestry were ordered by the government to move into internment camps, and all connections to home, school, community, and friends were broken. The first camp they were in was 15 miles from home. Then the family was moved to Amagic, Colorado. Thanks to the American Friends Society and the Nisei Relocation Society, Ida had a chance to relocate in the interior of the country at Parsons College, where she could complete her education. She says that the years of Parsons were the happiest years of her life. She says she felt accepted as herself, and she made lifelong friends and met professors and advisors who guided her toward her ambition to be a physician. After Parsons, she entered the Women's Medical College in Pennsylvania. During her senior year, 3 months from graduation, she came down with tuberculosis in spite of the school's best effort to protect their students from this disease. Because she was an impoverished student working her way through medical school, Ida was treated for free at the National Jewish Hospital. After undergoing antibiotic therapy and chest surgery, she was able to return to medical school to complete her senior year and graduate in 1953. Ida interned in pediatrics at Colorado General Hospital, and while there she met her husband, who was a resident in internal medicine. Ida and Stuart were faculty members of the University of Colorado Medical School for their entire careers. Ida worked in clinics and later started a clinic for teenage pregnant girls. Another pediatrician and Ida started a clinic for children of teenage mothers. Both needed special attention. She received an award from the local chapter of the Adolescent Medicine Society. For 20 years, she served on the admissions committee of the medical school, interviewing applicants. When Ida first retired, she taught at the University of Colorado Medical School on a volunteer basis for 3 years. Since her retirement, she has done volunteer work, including Reading for the Blind and Dyslexic, now called Learning Ally, reading medical material and related textbooks. In her private life, she and her husband have 2 children and 2 grandchildren. Their daughter is a medical writer and their son is a psychiatrist. Ida and her husband, Stuart, enjoy traveling. Building on their enjoyment of hiking in the mountains, they jointly wrote a book called Hiking for Old Geezers for the over 55 set. More recently, they have compiled a yet-to-be-published book about the small museums on the eastern mountain slopes of Colorado. Ida's entire adult life has been one of accomplishment and giving back. To this day, she remembers the kindnesses and help she received from others, from the American Friends Society, from the Jewish Hospital, and certainly from her professors and friends at Parsons College. She considers her own professional and volunteer efforts to be a form of paying it forward. I think you will agree that Ida embodies Parsons College's legacy very well. Thank you.
I know when people say they're getting older, they get forgetful, so Dick Reese, please forgive me. I'm out of order, and we're going to move to Dick Reese, Class of 64, International Appraiser. Would Joan Reese please come to the podium as presenter?
Good morning, honorees and guests. I'm here to proudly introduce Honoree Richard Reese, a 1964 graduate of Parsons College. On that graduation day, Richard was excited and anxious to begin the rest of his life, little imagining the twists and turns along the way. He looked at himself as a humble, regular guy from Cedar Rapids, Iowa. But indeed, he has had an impact around the world. Richard's majors were English and history, and I asked him why he chose those two subjects. He explained that in high school, he took a test that indicates aptitude, and that test indicated he had an aptitude for teaching and ministering. Well, he took it literally and said, well, I don't think I want to be a minister, but maybe I could be a teacher. So he went to Parsons and got his teaching credentials. During his years at college, he was determination and caring for his brothers. As he graduated, he did not follow a career in teaching, but instead began his career at Parsons as Director of Student Activities. Although Richard did spend several years actually teaching in a classroom at American Institute of Business, and still once in a while teaches a class at USC, teaching and ministering really were always a part of his life, natural inclinations. Now, 20 years later, some of his students still keep in touch with him, saying, "You literally changed my life." We were foster parents to 3 teenagers who are, by the way, still part of our active family, one of them in attendance today. Richard showed love and patience as he mentored these wonderful kids, teaching them lessons about commitment and caring. They have said, "You changed my life." On that day in 1964, he could hardly imagine that he, a young man from Cedar Rapids, Iowa, would one day teach in Russia and China to help them develop a skill in valuation and appraising. As soon as he became aware that the Russians needed somebody to teach them, Richard volunteered. He paid for his own plane ticket. There was no compensation, but he saw a need and he said, "I can help them." And he did. He went to Russia and he taught them. He's known today as the father of appraising. And he here